All right. We should be getting underway here. So just wanted to take this opportunity to do some live Q&A. See if I can pull this up so that I can make sure that I can be available for the chat. So as we go through this, I'll just start by answering some of the questions that I've been getting in the comments section, and then I'll start transitioning into people who are actually watching the live stream and want to get their questions answered. I know it's critical draft time for a lot of people's fantasy drafts. They're usually going on this week. If you've already drafted, that's probably something that you've planned on already. But if you haven't drafted yet, this could be a nice little place to get some insight. So just we'll just start here with some of the most recent stuff that I've gotten. Question: I got offered Brady, Tkachuk, and William Nylander for Kaprizov and Dylan Strome. So I told him decline. If you don't like Strome, you can play the waiver wire there, but Kaprizov is one of those elite, first round quality goal scoring left wingers. Tkachuk, his point per game numbers are significantly lower. So let's just look up Kaprizov. Kaprizov, he's only had 2 seasons in the league, but he's averaging 1.13 points per game. He was 1.33 last year, 47 goals, a .58 goal per game number. So he's within spitting distance of 50 in terms of goals. He also gets you 3.5 shots per game, which is very good, and a .38 on the power play, which is elite level. And then let's compare that to Brady Tkachuk, who I do believe is the better of the two Tkachuk brothers. So he's around a 30-goal pace, but his average point per game is .68 over the last 5 years. Last year, .84. And there may be some room for him to improve. There may be some room for him to grow, but you're still almost double the points per game with Kaprizov's 5-year average compared to Tkachuk's 5-year average. Now, Nylander is a nice player. He's a good player. I've had him on a number of teams, and you usually get him in the 8th or 9th round. And he's usually, pretty good value there. So .98 point per game player last year, .78 is his 5-year average, and a 34-goal scorer last year. So he is trending in the right direction. A little troublesome that he was a -9 on that offense. 3.1 shots per game, .38 on the power play. So he's still very good there. I would say if Joe Mama needed, if he needed some hits as opposed to just offensive production, then maybe that's worth a look. But for Kaprizov is about twice as good as Brady Tkachuk in terms of just straight offensive categories without hits. So it depends on league format. It depends on what he already has. That's why a lot of people ask me questions, and it's like, do you like this player or this player? And I'm like, well, what else do you have? What's your league format? Because a lot of that makes the difference between two players, especially if they're relatively close. And this could be, I think Strome is just a throw-in. So it would be Kaprizov for Nylander and Tkachuk. That could be worth it. But then you're wasting 2 roster spots for a guy who fills 1 and gets you the same level of coverage. So, I think that's one of those ones where you can, if you don't like Strome, you can pick somebody up on the waiver wire and it'll be comparable production. So let's keep moving on. So just a quick update. I've been waiting for this since the day I started this channel, and I was hoping it would happen after my draft, but my draft is this Tuesday at 9, and not everybody, but a bunch of people in my league finally found the channel. So they found me. I don't know how, but they found me. Run for it, Marty. But yeah, they got me so that now they have my complete playbook for exactly what I'm going to do in the draft. They have hours upon hours of my thought process on this channel, which is good for you guys, but it's now bad for me. If you watched earlier today's live stream, we did our data draft community draft, and that was a case where everybody was going to know my strategy regardless. So we have a first live question coming in now. Should I be looking at points per game to draft in the first round? So the reason why I look at points per game is because the last couple seasons were very different with COVID and the amount of games that people missed. Guys just missing time on the COVID list. An incomplete season in 2021. So per game metrics give you kind of more of a level playing field. When everything is normal, these are what these guys are capable of. If you're looking at points per game in the first round, it should mainly be if you're determining between similar players in similar positions. So maybe if you're determining between Kucherov, Rantanen, and Kaprizov, then yeah, you would look at the point per game numbers. The only reason you wouldn't look at the point per game numbers is if you're trying to play it for volume. If you're, you understand that a guy like Malkin has excellent point per game numbers, but you're thinking to yourself, like, he might only get 40 to 60 games. And so you're thinking about the volume aspect of that. That would be a chance where you don't go point per game in terms of the determining factor. But anytime I'm looking at just like what a player is capable of, the point per game metric kind of gives a little bit more of a level playing field. It smooths over for injuries and things like that, guys missing time. So that's why I use that more often than not. It isn't the perfect number, but it gives you a general sense of how well they play offensively. If you're getting goals, assists, points, power play points, that's all going to show up in the point per game metric. So that's typically why I go there. Now, here he says Makar, Kirill Kaprizov, or Kuznetsov for the first pick. I'm hoping that he was talking about Kucherov instead of Kuznetsov, because you should never go Kuznetsov with your first pick. If you're choosing between Kucherov, Kirill, or Makar, I've basically told people on this channel, if you want Makar, you have to pick him in the first round. There's no getting around it. Last year, I picked 9th in a 10-team league, and I ended up with the 9th and 12th pick, and I ended up with Rantanen and Makar, and I loved it because it gave me a dual-eligible center right wing in Rantanen, and then the best defenseman in Makar, and he was the best defenseman by a wide margin. The problem is now he's getting drafted 4th or 5th overall, and I'm not going to sit here and say he's not worth it. He's definitely worth it, but the positional scarcity comes into play, and defense is scarce. There's no, it's not like you're choosing a center there. You're choosing a defenseman, and they are rare, and you're getting the best one. But I think the difference between Makar and somebody else in that range, let's take a look at Makar and his 5-year point per game average and last year. So 5-year point per game average, he's right at a point per game, so 0.99. And then last year he was at 1.1. So that's incredible for a defenseman. That is elite level, and that's why he's going there. But if you look at some of the other guys in terms of point per game average, you're looking at, let me just pull up the 21-22 stats. So I have a separate monitor open. Usually that's how I run my draft. I'll keep the draft open on this tab, and then I'll have all the tools that I'm trying to use on the other tab on the other monitor. So if you look at last year's point per game numbers, and we sort by that, Connor McDavid was number 1, obviously, 1.53 points per game. Kucherov, 1.46. Matthews, 1.45. Huberdeau was 1.43. Johnny Gaudreau was 1.4. And then you have Draisaitl at 1.37. McKinnon, 1.35. So what you're getting a difference in probably 0.3 to 0.4 points per game by going with the forward over the defenseman. And if you want a point per game defenseman, you can find that in the second round, in the third round. A guy like Fox, a guy like Ekblad, maybe even John Carlson. And there have been other guys that have hit that point per game mark that are much deeper in the draft, even though, like a guy like Brent Burns used to be able to do that, and now he's going much later in the draft. But that's the difference. I would typically pick the best forward just because there is a huge gap in point per game in that first round. So Game Day Hockey on the live chat. I went heavy on D and wingers, waited to take a center, and ended up with Tavares, who's now injured. Can I save my team? Absolutely. Yeah, so you have Larkin and Norris, and you picked up Hurdle. That's perfectly fine. So Larkin, I have on my data draft community team. Just picked him up earlier today, and he's been on a number of my teams. He's close to a point per game center. He's a 30-goal guy. He gets good shot volume as well. Norris last year, small sample size, but 35 goals, 16 power play goals. And right now, so if you're looking at the Ottawa Senators power play, I think what's going to happen is they're going to use both units, which is troublesome because they have so much talent that you want access to. And Josh Norris is one of those guys, and he is on what you would normally call PP1. But Josh Norris with Batherson, Tkachuk, Shabbat, and Stutzle on that first unit, that could be really excellent exposure for you as you're waiting for Tavares. And when Tavares comes back, he's a 40-goal center. So, I haven't really mentioned him too much, in terms of the videos and whatnot, just because eye test, he's getting a little slower. He is a little bit injured at this point, but he's still very productive. So if you just have Hurdle to wait until Tavares comes back, I think that'll work out for you. Nick says, I have Rust, Malkin, and Letang for a strict points league. Do you think I should trade one of Rust or Malkin? Both tend to get injured, but if healthy, I could have gotten a few steals. I agree with you. And you're right to cause that, to bring that concern up, because if there's one team that does get injured, it's Pittsburgh. The problem that you're going to have with Rust is he doesn't have the name value. So he's an excellent fantasy producer. He just doesn't, I don't know if he's going to have the name value to be able to trade him, just given what he's got going on. But, if you have an opportunity, you could trade Malkin, but you're probably not going to get anybody as good in return. That would be a tough one. If you can make the trade, then I think that's a smart play. It's just a matter of trying to find somebody worth. I'm trying to read the next one here. Message retracted. Okay. But yeah, I mean, the Pittsburgh guys, they're all going to be productive when healthy. They're just not always going to be healthy. So yeah, that's one where I like each of those players individually. It's just if you can find a taker for maybe Malkin, because he would be the guy that has the name value that you could trade. And then maybe just if you're getting somebody who puts up fewer points but potentially has, a higher volume just because they're not getting injured, that could make a difference. Just got a new sub. I appreciate that. As we return back here, see if we have any other good questions. Yeah, I think this was his corrected one where he put Kucherov. I think that's the same guy. Yeah, so this guy, he did point that out. I didn't have Matty Beniers in the rookie targets video. If I had it to do over again, he would have been on there. He would have been around McTavish, around Robertson. He's one of those guys. He put up really good numbers last year. If I pull him up real quick. So Matty Beniers last season, 10 games, 3 goals, 6 assists, 9 points, 1.8 shots per game, and 0.4 on the power play. Obviously not a lot of power play time, but he did get 4 points on the power play. 2 goals, 2 assists, I believe. So, Beniers would have been a good guy to pick up there. As we return to the live chat, why do you think Makar has been going 5th in most drafts? Why not Kaprizov or Cooch as 5th pick instead of the D? I do think it is too much to pay for a D. I think he's going there because it's very clear that he's the elite defenseman. I think a lot of people think that goalies and D are the biggest rarity and the toughest thing to find later. And so they see Vasilevsky and Shesterkin, or usually just Vasilevsky, and they're like, okay, he's the number one, so I'm going to reach and grab him in the first round just so that I'm set there, that kind of thing. And I think they do the same thing with Makar. And it's not a bad idea with Makar because he is head and shoulders the best defenseman in the league. But it's just, from a strategy standpoint, if you can find that D in the 20 to 30 range, you're not losing a ton of production in terms of your D, but you're gaining a ton of production in terms of your offense and what you can get in the first round versus what you can get in the second round. That's just my opinion. If you like to make sure that your D is elite level, then that's where you got to get Makar. Frederick, I draft 10th. I expect to land either Kucherov, Ovi, or Rantanen. At 15th, I'm going for D1, Hedman, Fox, Yossi, even if it's a bit early. Next pick is at 34. We're down to tier 2 of D-men. And 39th, I got to go with G1. My question is, at 34, should I go with D2 or elite forward? So my thought process on that, you have a plan in place. If you get to pick 34 and you already have your elite D-man and a forward that should not be there is falling to you, that just happened in the most recent draft that I did. Jack Eichel fell quite a bit. And there were a couple of guys. I should have picked a D, and there were just too many. I think Marner was available with my second overall pick, and he should not have been there in the second round. So I just ended up drafting him. It's a gut call. If you really want to stick to the strategy, I would go D2. But if there's somebody crazy there at 34, maybe Patrick Kane drops to you, it's very difficult not to pick him and go for the best available. See if I can pull up the live. I don't know if I can do this. It'll be a little bit of an Inception type thing. If I can pull up the chat on here and then read it live. Just have to mute this. Yeah. It's not going to show me the comments. That sucks. But it does show me the chat. So Nick says, along with the Pens, I also have a few Blues players, Thomas, Tarasenko, Shen, and Saad. Do you think it's smart to stack one of the best power plays? It is. I don't like Saad. I think the rest of these guys are pretty safe. If you're stacking, it's best to stack from somebody who has an elite level offense like they do. So, yeah, I mean, the Blues are a good team to mine there for fantasy value. I don't love Saad there. You could probably find somebody better on the wire. But other than that, these guys are pretty safe. Tarasenko's a goal scorer. Thomas, maybe a moneybags candidate. He just got paid. Shen usually covers a lot of categories as well. But, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Game day for goalie depth. Grubauer, Merzlikins, Cal Peterson. Do you think Francouz is number one? Yeah, that's been my play. I think Georgiev, he got shelled the other night. I know it's preseason, but he gave up 6 goals in 2 periods. I think Francouz is not necessarily the number one, but if you get Francouz, it's still got, that's a problem. Let me fix that. So I interrupt this. I still have this picture here from the draft earlier. So let's remove that. But yeah, I like Grubauer. I like Merzlikins. I like Peterson. And I do think Francouz could become the number one. I don't think he is the number one. I think they'll have to battle it out. But I think everyone is thinking Georgiev's going to get it. But to be honest with you, Georgiev has not been drafted that high. So he's been faded a little bit. And I think that could work to your advantage if you want both of them. And that would be the play for me, both of them. But if you don't get Georgiev, Francouz is a nice option because he could become the number one in Colorado, and you'd be getting him for dirt cheap. Shermont says, so like picking Cooch 5th and trying to grab Fox at 20 wouldn't be bad. No, that's not bad at all. You'd get elite power play production. You'd get some right wing goal scoring out of Cooch, and then Fox, you'd get a lot of assists, excellent power play coverage, some blocks on top of that. Who do I like more, Stutzle or Laine? I like that Stutzle is a center left wing eligible. I like everything going on in Ottawa's top 6. And Laine is a little bit streaky. So yeah, as I'm watching this, it's a huge Inception thing going on here with all the chats going all the way back in. That's pretty cool. But anyway, yeah, I never know what to put on the screen for a live Q&A, but we'll do some trial and error. But yeah, I think Laine has more goal potential. I think if you're in need of goal scoring, Laine's dual position eligible, left wing, right wing, and he's going to get you more goals. But I do think he's one of those guys that he goes ice cold for long stretches, and then he'll pop for like 17 goals in a month. So for that month, you'll love him, and then for the rest of the time, it'll be a little bit different. It'll be a little difficult to hold on to him. But I guess I'd say, again, it depends on what you have and what you're looking to cover. I like them both. I think Laine's more in the prime of his career and more primed for that career season, whereas Stutzle is a little young, and his best years are probably in his early 20s, which he's just entering now, but he's not quite as old as Laine. So, 1 second. All right, so just did the draft, got Matthews 3rd, Yossi, Miller at 18-23, and then DeBrincat and Kane. Very nice. Yeah, Kane, I don't understand why Kane is at 43. Like, I just did a live draft with a patron last night, and he got Pat Kane in the 6th round. It just makes no sense. He's a first rounder every year. Even though the team sucks this year, he's likely going to get traded, and even if he doesn't get traded, he's still a 1.15 point per game guy. Tons of power play coverage, 30 goals on average. He is more of an assist guy, but he's still going to score. He's still going to do all the things that he usually does. I think that's money in the bank if you can get him in the 4th, 5th round where you got him. Cheers from Montreal. I'm pulling for Montreal to an extent. I like Jeff Gordon. I like Kent Hughes, what they've been doing. And to be honest with you, they've got some deep fantasy forward value. I wouldn't necessarily go there with the D or the goalies just because there's a lot, up in the air. But Dadonov coming over, he's going to add some goal scoring for free. Hoffman had a terrible year last year. He's, I think, dual eligible and usually a 30-goal scorer. Then you have Caulfield. If you want to go Slafkovsky. The reports haven't been great about Slafkovsky, but he did extremely well at the rookie camp, and then he's been inconsistent so far. And that's why I don't take, people have been joking about my aversion to rookies. It's not just rookies. Like, if you have a rookie that's been playing in the, different leagues for a couple years, that's fine, but don't get a guy who was just drafted, 3 months ago. Those guys are almost impossible to have consistent fantasy production from. Raj says, points league, 11th and 14th pick, Pasta and Marner. Get the right wings done quick. Yeah, I mean, Marner slid in my draft. I ended up getting him in the 2nd round, and I like that too. He's now more of a goal scorer than he was in the past. So it's one of those situations where with those picks, you would probably want a defenseman. If Makar's gone, because by the next time you pick, you're maybe looking at Carlson or Ekblad and Quinn Hughes and that bunch. So if you wanted to make sure you got that defenseman, I wouldn't go Pasta and Marner. But if you go Pasta and Marner, you're getting right wing goal production, right wing power play production, and two of the best. Each of those guys is first round picks. So I wouldn't be upset about getting either of those guys or both. It's just a matter of, do you want that D? And if you don't go that D there, then you have to kind of plan for that with your next pick. I got Malkin round 11. Couldn't believe it. He can't be that bad. Yeah, no. I like 11th round Malkin. I get not taking him in the 5th or 6th round, but at 11th round, he's a point per game center. Even though he gets hurt at 11th round, that's going to be value for you, Pat. Yeah, if he's there in my draft at 11, I'll probably be going there. You think Point or Hughes should be going higher in standard drafts? How early is too early to take them? They should be going higher. I think for Jack Hughes, if that's who you're talking about, because there's 2 Hugheses, about to be 3 in the league at some point. But with Jack Hughes, I think anything earlier than the 4th round is too early. But if you get him in the 4th round, that's still value, in my opinion. Point, I maybe wouldn't go ahead of the 6th round with Point, just because there's things that you need in terms of building your team that you could potentially pick ahead of centers, because there's a ton of centers in that 6th to 10th round range. So yeah, I would say 4th round for Hughes, 6th round for Point would be the earliest I'd go there. Worth taking a flyer on Beniers, or are there other players who would be better in this ADP range, last 3 or 4 rounds of the draft? Typically with my last picks in the draft, that's where I'm willing to take a flyer on a rookie. If I'm, targeting somebody there, if they've got a good line assignment, Beniers has that. He should be a top 6 center. He had almost a point per game last year in 10 games. It's just a small sample size. So it is a little bit difficult to predict how it's going to go, just because there's not a lot of data on him. But yeah, I mean, last 2 picks, it's worth it. There's probably better players to pick, but if you like him and if you like his upside, then that's a decent place to get him. So 12 teams, 7th pick, head-to-head points, take Makar at 7 if he's there, if you want to. I know it's a dumb cop-out, but I don't like picking D in the 1st round just because of the 0.3, 0.4 point per game difference between forwards and D in that range. But you're getting the best defenseman, and if he's there at 7, if that's the guy you want, you can usually plan around that and round out your offense otherwise. But just for me, I think I got him at 12 last year, and I thought that was reaching a little bit, and that's pretty much where he ended up. So I felt okay there at 12. Where do I see Alex Pietrangelo going? Good for value. So him and Theodore are tied at the hip, and they went back to back in the draft that we just did this afternoon. Whoever gets the power play time there is the guy to go to. Theodore, I think, is going to get you more goal coverage. Pietrangelo is going to get you more shot coverage. So as I bring up their stats from last season, Pietrangelo, he had 13 goals too, so not bad there. I think his point per game is down a little bit. And then his shot volume, 2.8, so not bad there. But they're both around 0.15, 0.16 power play points per game. And if you combine the two of them, they'd be at 0.3. So if one guy takes the job and runs with it, then I think that's the way to go. It's tough for me to use them as a D1 or a D2 if they're not going to get that power play time. So that's the only problem there with both of those guys in Vegas. Also, would all the additions to the offense in Ottawa hurt the overall production of Tkachuk's shot and goal point production? Not shot on goal, and probably not points either. That'll probably help him, but it may take away from his power play production, which I'm just thinking about now. So if they happen to use 2 power play units, which they have plenty of guys for, then that would potentially reduce his power play production. But shots, he's still going to shoot. I'm in a dynasty keeper league where we draft players and they stay on our farm. Is it worth keeping Farabee? What's his projection this year? I wonder about his health. He's been injured a little bit. Let me look that up. That's the one problem. I was a little bit higher on Philly this year with Torts behind the bench, but if they're not going to be healthy, that's really difficult. And Couturier's out, so that doesn't help. Couturier's week to week with an upper body injury. Come on, give me Farabee. So it says Farabee, his status for October 13th season opener is uncertain. He's progressing well after undergoing disc replacement surgery in his neck area 3 months ago. So I guess that sounds like what just happened to Jack Eichel. So keeper leagues, I think that'll be fine. I just don't know if this year is going to be his career year, but it could be one of those things like with Eichel where now he's healthy and he feels better, so his production will increase from what it was last year. I don't know if I'd drop him just based on that because it sounds like he's going to be available pretty soon. Look at Farabee's file real quick because I haven't really gone into him too much. I've kind of stayed away from some of the Flyers just because of their injury histories. I liked Ellis too. And now he's fighting to regain his career. Yeah, Farabee might not be worth it. 0.53 point per game. He's around a mid-20s goal pace. And if he's dealing with a neck injury, that may not be worth it. I don't know what the cost is going to be to get rid of him in terms of, what's available on the wire, but it may not be worth it to stay with Farabee. Second league is Roto League with positions and face-off wins. It's a no-brainer to take some winger-eligible face-off win guys. What do you think about utility? So for face-off win leagues, it depends on what the weighting is. But if there's heavy weighting for face-off wins, I have a whole dashboard dedicated just to face-off wins. See if I can pull it up and just give you guys a sneak peek. So what you're going to look at here is face-off targets. These are the face-off leaders, just straight up. Bergeron. In a face-off league, if they're 1 point per face-off win, you got to go Bergeron in the first round. 991 face-off wins, 4 shots on goal. O'Reilly's a lot less in the shots department. If you're in the top 5 in the draft, you got to target Draisaitl because he's dual position eligible and he's getting shots and face-off wins. But these are some of the names you could target for face-off wins. Kopitar, Horvat, Lindholm used to be dual eligible. He's just a center now. Pajot is a guy who never gets drafted, but he puts up a ton of face-off wins. Same with Jordan Staal. Giroux is dual eligible, so that could be a nice winger option for your face-off leagues. Colton Sissons is never drafted, and he doesn't put up the shots, but he gets the face-off wins. Philip Deneau is a sneaky good pick here in a face-off league. So 676 face-off wins, 2.4 shots, and that line, Philip Deneau, Victor Arvidsson, and Trevor Moore, they were the 10th highest scoring line in the league last year. So if you're in a deep league and you need some face-off wins, he's a good option. But yeah, so this is just face-off leaders. This is face-off leaders sorted by shot volume. So this is Austin Matthews at the top. Obviously, his shot volume, 4.7 shots per game, is nuts. So nothing really changes at the top of your draft if you're in a face-offs league. Bergeron is still, I mean, just look at how prolific he is with the face-off wins and the shots. Kadri becomes an option there with the shot volume. And then Dylan Larkin, I mentioned him in the draft that we did earlier today. I picked him up, and we don't have face-off wins, but if you do, almost 3 shots a game and 630 face-off wins. And then Hartman and Ericksson Eck on the same team, both getting a decent amount of shots and face-off wins. So there's some interesting guys to pick here. And then face-off leaders and points. So this is a little bit of a different look. This is just sorted by face-off wins. So yeah, it's a lot of the same names. Nothing crazy, new, or interesting on this one. But just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a look there. I'll return back to the chat. Lost my place. There we are. Danny asks, what are your thoughts on stacking in general? I've heard you say in some drafts that you don't want to pick a player because you already have a teammate, line mate, but I've seen others encouraging it. It depends on what position and what team. So my thoughts on stacking, if you're picking St. Louis Blues, you can stack them because there's 9 guys on that team who are capable of putting up 20 goals or, 45, 50 points. If you're stacking from a mid-tier team or something like that, maybe don't go there. The other thing too, if you're stacking, like today in my draft, I had Panarin with my 3rd pick. And then later in the draft, I was looking at Zibanejad. It makes a ton of sense because if one of them gets power play points, the other's going to get power play points. But then the thought process is you have to play both of them on the same night every night. So you're not getting the same game volume if the schedules are different. So if you have a guy who plays a lot of Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday games, and then you stack him with another guy who gets the same exact kind of coverage, then that might limit you on the off days. But if it's a good team, if it's a good situation, you could still go there. I would have gone Zibanejad and Panarin, but Zibanejad got picked right out from under me. No big deal. But stacking in terms of goaltending, the reason you'd stack with goaltending would be to try to get access to an elite team defense. So if you're picking a goalie from, Boston, LA, one of the best defenses in the league, then that's something that you could do. If you're not, then I wouldn't stack goalies from a not great defensive team or a team that's not going to get a ton of wins. It looks more likely that Pietrangelo is getting outright PP1 now. That's an interesting development. Thanks, Owen. I saw the highlights of the game the other night, and it looks like Kessel and Eichel are making magic together. I just didn't happen to notice who was on the PP. But Kessel could be a very nice deep play. He'll be in the video that I'm working on right now for likely tomorrow. Really deep league value plays because he's not getting drafted at all. And if he's playing with Jack Eichel, you want that exposure. Thanks a lot, Dev. What do we do with picks 10 and 11 in a 10-team deep draft where D-men get more points for goals and assists? Otherwise, all cats the same. Definitely get one best player available. Somebody will probably drop to you that you didn't think you're going to get. And then definitely take either Hedman or Yossi with that next pick. I think Yossi has the higher ceiling. I think Hedman is a little safer. But they're both going to get you power play points and goals. Yossi had 23 goals last year. He was second in the league, so I'm assuming Makar is going to be gone at that point. Game Day asking if Gudas is worth keeping for hits. I'm wondering if I think you've commented on my videos before, but anybody, it's a running joke in the Discord chat we have. Gudas is my guy for hits. He's 4.6 hits per game, and nobody's even close. Just for a little bit of fun, I'll show you the breakdown, how it looks in terms of hits per game. See if I can freeze that far pane. So this is the hits. If it'll show. 4.6 for Gudas. Luke Schenn is close, but he doesn't get quite enough blocks. Same thing with Niemelainen. And then if you're getting Reeves, it's just not worth getting a right wing who's just going to hit. He hits a ton, but he doesn't do anything else. So Gudas, in terms of hits and blocks, there's nobody better than Gudas. Now, Luke Schenn is a little bit closer than I had originally thought. But and then look at Jeannot, 6th overall. So if you're looking for a forward who covers hits, it's Jeannot. Tkachuk is right here. And that's why he usually goes so high in drafts, because he's 13th in hits. And he's a forward who puts up a ton of points. Not a ton of points, but enough points. Brandon Tanev is a sneaky good play here. 3.2 hits last season, but the last full season he played, he was above 4 hits a game. And he does chip in offensively as well. And he's, some of these guys, these forwards, Reeves, Clutterbuck, Aston Reese, Matt Martin, they're third, fourth line guys, but Tanev is a little bit higher in the lineup. Same with Jeannot. So, yeah, I would definitely recommend Gudas for hits. Hoping for a combo of Rantanen and Cooch and a D. Yeah, that'd be very nice. Thoughts on running 5 defensemen? Seider, Hughes, Theodore, Forsling, and Bouchard. You could package maybe... what I would do in that situation, monitor Edmonton's power play. If Bouchard's not getting the time, before anyone else figures that out, you could package him and try to deal him for a better defenseman. If he gets the time, you could still package him because he might lose it. I might. Oh, sorry, Ike. I'll grab your question next if I can find it. I highlight this to try to remember where I'm at. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with 5D. Typically, if I need another defenseman, and especially if it's a hits guy, you can find those on the wire. But if you did want to package them for a deal, I would do so before anybody else realizes that he's not on the PP, or if he is on the PP. Forsling's your plus minus guy. Hughes is a power play guy. Seider does a little bit of everything. Theodore gets you goals. So you have some good category coverage there. Where was Ike's question? Okay, here. Bangers Keeper League. I mean, I just can't warrant Brady Tkachuk 6th overall. It's just too early. I mean, I just laid out his point production, and I'll read it out again just because. But I mean, if hits are really that important in your league, then ignore my advice and go with what you know in terms of figuring out your league. Come on. Brady Tkachuk. He did have 30 goals last year, so I'll give him credit there. And I'm not trying to say he's a bad player. I just don't think he's a 6th overall guy. 0.84 point per game last year, 0.68 5-year average. And if you look at every other year, 0.63, 0.61, 0.64, and then last year he jumped up quite a bit. He's still a minus player on top of all that. The shot volume is definitely there. High 3s in terms of shots. The power play production could be better. .21, .17, .11, .14. So not crazy good power play production and not crazy good in terms of point per game, plus minus, but he gets you a ton of shots, a ton of hits. So, I mean, if you're looking at your league format and the shots and the hits are making that much of a difference, I guess you could go with him 6th overall. I just wouldn't. I think there's better offensive options. Thoughts on Marty Necas as an under-the-radar breakout candidate? He's been coming for a while. It just hasn't happened for him. And I listened to an interview with Rod Brindamore, and he specifically mentioned Necas they need more out of him. Especially they just lost Trocheck, so they're in need of centers. So last year, .51 point per game. His 5-year average, .61. But his best season was a .77, and that was in 2021. So that's not that long ago. He had 41 points in 53 games. He's not that much of a goal scorer. He could be low to mid-20s in an 82-game season. And then 2 shots a game. On a really good team, he was only +5. That's a little concerning. No power play production whatsoever. That might be his problem, fantasy-wise. So he doesn't get any category coverage. I wouldn't recommend him for fantasy. I hope he breaks out to an extent. I don't hope that Carolina's any good because I'm a Rangers fan, but he is a very skilled player, and it looked like it was happening for him in 2021, and he just kind of took a back step. So if you wanted to go Necas, I would wait and get him off the wire, but you're buying low, and he could pop just because he's a lot lower than his previous high. So, .77 was his high, .51 points per game. If you're banking on that a little bit lower in your draft or in the waiver wire, that's fine. What is the order? Kaprizov, Kucherov, and Rantanen. I would go Kucherov, Kaprizov, and then Rantanen. Mainly because Kucherov is a 1.45 point per game guy at his best. Actually, he's above 1.5. 1.56 was his career high. And I don't think anybody's hit that. Kaprizov was 1.33 last year. And then Rantanen is about 1.2. Rantanen had excellent plus-minus if you're in a plus-minus league. Kaprizov gets a little bit more goal coverage, but Kucherov has that goal potential as well. I just think that with this, Kaprizov's left wing, Kucherov is a goal-scoring right wing, which is more rare. And then Rantanen is dual-eligible center right wing. So if you want the positional flexibility, I'd go Rantanen. I just wouldn't pick him over these two guys in terms of his ceiling. So it's kind of a gut call on how you want to build your team if you want the center right wing versus if you want just a left wing, just a right wing who can score goals. Does Carter Hart ever come back from what has been 2 abysmal seasons? So yeah, I covered that a little bit. Maybe while we're doing this, I can bring up the screen grabs from the shorts videos just to give you a little bit of a sense of what they've been doing. If you just bear with me for a second. Still trying to figure out how to best put something interesting on the screen for you guys to look at while you listen to me blabber on and answer questions. Where did it go? I think Carter Hart is due for a breakout, and this would have been the year. It didn't happen for him. I think they've been really terrible defensively over the last couple of years. If Ryan Ellis was playing with John Tortorella's defense, I do like that. But the problem there is it's just difficult to bank on that team being a bounce-back candidate when they're missing their top center and their top defenseman. And they bring over Tony D, and he's decent, but he's not a shutdown D. So I don't think that helps Carter Hart at all. I would like to see it from him, and to be honest with you, he's not getting drafted at all. So you could do worse than trying to grab him late. So I have the picture. I just don't have the stats with it. Yeah, I was hoping that it would have the stats there too. So if I've done a short on a player, I will have the stats available to throw up there. But I didn't have a short video for him. Hope I get 1,000 today. Me too, because that would mean I can actually monetize and actually start making money doing this instead of just spending an inordinate amount of time doing this kind of stuff. I think I lost my place in the chat. Where'd we go? We're right here. Okay. Who do I like most second overall? Draisaitl. Dual position, center, left wing, goal scorer, 50 goal potential. If you have face-off wins, he's a monster for that. He's 3.5 shots per game. I could see the argument for Matthews, but I would definitely go Draisaitl too. Cats League for the Roto with face-off wins. So if you just missed it, I went over a ton of face-off candidates, and I would definitely make sure all your wingers are centers that win face-offs. And if you happen to be in the league that I'm drafting in on Tuesday, I hope you ignore all of my advice because it's a heavy face-off win league. Do you have stats on dual eligibility importance? There's no way to quantify it, in my opinion. I think the way that you'd go about it is you can check what happened in your league last year. There's a thing you can go to, I think it's Game Log or Team Log is what it's called on Yahoo. And you can use that and see exactly how many games and like what everybody produced over the past season. And maybe if you looked at that for long enough, you could figure out there was some maybe numerical value for dual position. I just think that it comes in handy for playing the schedule. If you've got guys that are playing on the same night and you start noticing that over the course of the first couple weeks of your season, everybody's playing Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and you don't have any coverage on the weaker nights, then it may be important to try to trade for a dual eligible guy that you can shift around so that you can get more volume into your lineup. But other than that, I mean, the benefit of a dual eligible guy is typically on those busy nights when you can move guys around and make sure every single position is covered with the best available player. It's just difficult to get a numerical value for that and try to pick that up. I mean, the other thing too is, I mean, there's a lot of tools that you can use, but Yahoo doesn't have a lot of like backdated stuff that you can pick from and try to do an analysis on that. It's not the most important thing, but it does come into play in my drafts. You can maybe hear my son screaming upstairs. He should be fine. Probably hungry. He's a fat baby. Stacking is viable if you're deployment stacking. Rasmus and Uyghur, Barry Bouchard, drop one. Yeah, I mean, you could do that. I just don't know if I'd draft both Barry and Bouchard or like draft both. I mean, it's you could drop them easily. So if you get it with the last pick, that's definitely a strategy you could go with. That's more if you're completely unsure as to which guy's going to get the power play. I would lean Rasmus Anderson and I would lean Barry. But to be honest, I haven't watched Edmonton in the preseason or Calgary for that matter. So I don't know what they're thinking right now. There's no cost to drop him for Farabee except that I lose his keeper rights. I don't think that's a huge concern. Same question for Keller in Arizona. He was ripping it up. Yeah, I think I grabbed Keller this morning. So he's a .93 point per game guy, and if you don't have plus minus, that's a huge. So that's an exact reason why you don't want plus minus in your league, because it opens up the amount of available players that you can use. Normally, we're all looking at Arizona. Nobody wants Chychrun. Nobody wants Keller. Nobody wants Schmaltz. Even some of the younger guys, Barrett Hayton. I went several rookies deep, didn't even mention him. Nobody wants that exposure, but if you don't have plus minus, there's no reason not to pick him. I mean, he's very productive. Let me look up his numbers really quick. Keller. 28 goals in 67 games last year. He was really close to he's a mid-30 goal pace in an 82-game season. .94 point per game last year, .71 average, 2.6 shots, so okay, not great, but not definitely ownable. Power play numbers are a little low I wouldn't expect there to be anybody else to score on the power play, and he was .16 on the power play per game number. Obviously no hits, no blocks, but if you're just looking for offensive production, Keller is definitely an option there. Thanks a lot. I want to say Gene. If it's John, correct me. But I've definitely, I love the Discord group. The Discord group is a ton of fun. We just did our league draft this afternoon. It was awesome. And the thing that I like about the Discord group is it's not just me dictating things. Like, there's other people bringing stuff to my attention, and that helps everybody. It's impossible for one person to monitor every team in the league. So when guys bring me, the Kuzmenko pick, that was Jared in the Discord group, just mentioning that he was on PP1, he was the down low guy, 3 points in one period, all that stuff. So if you want to join the Patreon group, the Discord server, it is a nice resource to have, and likely there will be a lot of discussion in season, talking about different trends, different things, and typically speaking, in your season, if you're looking for a waiver pickup, if you're looking for a guy to add or whatever, the quicker you have access to information, the more you're going to be able to act on that before anybody else in your league can get to that guy on the waiver wire. So it's a good resource to have, that Patreon group. Drafting for the first time today, head-to-head points, any tips? Yes. I'm sorry that I probably won't see it, but if you can, with your next question, give me all of the point weightings, and I'll tell you how to figure out where to prioritize things. That seems to be what we're doing for a lot of the points leagues that I'm advising people on, because a lot of points weightings are a little bit different, and sometimes they're just bonkers, and you can completely game the league. So without knowing that, I don't want to steer you in the wrong direction. But comment below, and I'll probably get to it once I roll through a couple of these comments. 12th pick in a 12-team draft. Is Brady a first-round guy with Skater Cats? I don't think so. Like I said, his power play numbers aren't good. His point totals aren't good. The main reason you get him is for hits and shots. His plus minus is likely not going to be great. The power play numbers are probably not going to be great. Same with these categories. I don't know. I'm averse to the Tkachuks just because people value them so high because of the hits and blocks. But I mean, you're wasting a first round pick just to get hits and blocks. You should never do that, in my opinion. You can find Jeannot, Wilson, Tanev, any of those guys are good for hits, and you can find them with the last pick in the draft. If you need a D for hits and blocks, you can do that. That was my strategy with the hits and blocks video, is don't waste a first round pick on a guy with hits and blocks. Like, get your coverage later. Take the best player available in the first round. But I mean, there's a lot of people out there who like to get a lot of category coverage with one player. If you're in that, if that describes you perfectly, then yeah, you might. Because if you want Brady Tkachuk and you have the 12th pick, you're going to have to get him there because he's not going to be around with the next batch of picks that you have. So if he's your guy, then go for it. I wouldn't do it though. Kuzmenko or Vrana? You have Tkachuk and Ovi as your starting left wingers. See, that's fine because you have Ovi too. The option to keep both would be to just have Jari and Demko and drop Francouz. Head-to-head points, goalie wins. Oh, that's tough. Because there's no information other than his KHL numbers for Kuzmenko, and that could go either way. Like you saw a couple years ago, Panarin comes into the league and he's the rookie of the year, and then you see a couple years later, Gusev comes into the league and he sucks, and then you see Shipachev comes into the league, he plays 3 games and goes back over. So I don't think that's the case with Kuzmenko. It seems like he's fitting in really well in Vancouver. I would hope that he stays on the power play when Besser comes back, but that's up in the air. And with Vrana, he's just had a lot of injuries, and there's just not a lot of time on the ice the last couple of seasons, but he was half a point per game in 26 games last year. I'm sorry, half a goal per game. So 13 goals in 26 games. I think as of now, Vrana's not playing on that power play. I think he was slotted in there, but I'm pretty sure if I were the coach, I'd rather have David Perron on that power play. So if Kuzmenko's on the power play, I would keep him. If you wanted to keep both, dropping Francouz isn't the end of the world. You have plenty of starts and wins, and Jari and Demko are good enough where if you drop Francouz, you need to grab a goalie on the waiver wire later on. That's fine. So yeah, you could probably drop Francouz. I like him. I'm not going to say that he's worth dropping just on his own, but if that's the strategy play, and then maybe you wait and see if Vrana's on that power play, maybe you keep him, and then if he doesn't, then you drop him and pick Francouz back up. It's tough to say. Of the two, I would prefer Kuzmenko, I think. 6th is way too high for Brady, banger league or not. That's my opinion. Yeah. Been drafting Keandre Miller with my last pick. I love that. I just don't think fantasy-wise he has historically covered categories. Let me look at his file, though, because I do love that. And I've been watching him in preseason. He looks like he's going to, break away and score 20, probably not 20 goals, but he has that potential. He hasn't shown it on the ice with fantasy production yet. 7 goals in 82 games last year. Very healthy. Elite skater for sure. 0.24 points per game. So I don't know if he's ownable yet. 1.2 shots. Plus minus is good. Plus 23. 1.84 hits and 1.15 blocks. So that's the sneaky play. And yeah, that pair is a shutdown pair. So Trouba is usually the hits and blocks guy, but it looks like Keandre Miller's like taking a look over at his D-man, and he's like, I can do that too. So he's been hitting and blocking as well. I think he takes a huge jump in his offensive production. I just don't know to what extent. So I do think Keandre Miller is going to have a nice season. I just don't know if he's fantasy relevant yet, but if you're going to try to draft him with your last pick and hope that works out, that's perfectly fine. Brady Tkachuk ended the last year 3rd overall in Yahoo rankings. See, that's where you're knowing your league's format. That's where that comes in handy. So if he's the 3rd overall player, then yeah, I could see that being a top 6 pick. And no plus minus, that helps a little bit too there. No, like just with the league formats that I've been exposed to, I wouldn't do it. But if he's that good in your league, then yeah. And that's why, again, people ask me these kind of questions without the background info. And I'm not blaming you for that. I'm just saying I get a lot of comments and people are like, this guy or that guy. And it's like, well, I need a lot more information to help you actually navigate that question. So if he's third overall in your Yahoo rankings, then I don't see a dip from him this year. In fact, I think he's going to take a little bump off of his production, or at least be able to maintain what he did last year. Brady's ice time is down, but he's the captain now. So it's not like they're not going to throw him out in all the big situations. And he's still the net front power play guy. I would like to see his production go up a little bit more on the power play, but how does drafting with 6 people change draft strategy? It drastically changes things. Everybody's team is going to be stacked, and the difference between teams is going to be minutia. So you cannot swing and miss on any picks. And then basically all of the ranges that I've been giving out for where to draft people, just cut those in half, because that's for a 12-team league. So if you're in a 6-team league, you don't want to pick a goalie in the first 15 instead of the first 30. But there will probably be guys who do that anyway. But I'd say any time outside of the top 12 to 15 is when you could start looking at goalies. I would make sure that you'll probably be able to get some really good D. And then I think that kind of makes you fade centers even more, because the quality of centers you're going to get later in your draft is going to be a normal like 6th to 8th round pick. So you're likely ending up with a guy who's a point per game as a center if you can push that back. Damn it, just jumped ahead there. I'm going to try to go a little faster since I'm falling behind on the chat. Skip that one. Yeah, that's a nice I like, yeah. I think Brady's a second rounder, but again, league format is different. So if he's the third best player, the PP time in Ottawa is what I'm now worried about. I was wondering about how they'd cram 7 or 8 guys onto one power play unit, and I didn't think that they just split it in half and use both units. Appreciate that. It shouldn't be fascinating. It's pretty, other than it's a little bit trippy looking at kind of Inception comments on the screen. But yeah, other than that. Is 8th round too early for D3? No. That's, you're missing out on some really good offensive players, but, your Nurse, Trouba, those kind of guys, those are going to be going in the 80 to 100 range, which is probably where you're at in the 8th round. So that's probably fine. Trouba is definitely good for hits and blocks over Shabbat and Werenski. Werenski's really good for shots, though. So just to throw that out there, third best in D shooting. Kucherov being a right wing puts him ahead of Kaprizov. That's what I thought too. Thanks for taking the time. You're welcome. Let's get to 1K. And anybody in this, if your draft has already happened, you can spread this around to the guys in your league. Mine hasn't happened, and they already found out, so kind of screwed there. We need more live draft, but I understand that that's more vulnerable for getting sniped, but today's draft was really nice to watch. Normally I would do, maybe if I run out of stuff to do, I'll do a mock today. But I do have something lined up later. Little advice for somebody going through a draft later today. Do I plan on continuing to make content throughout the season? Yes, it's just going to be a little bit different. All the content that I've been making has been possible because earlier in the summer I did a lot of analysis using the data from last year. Now it's going to have to be done on the fly. So I'm thinking it will be, especially lately, I've been trying to get a video out there 5 days a week. Usually it's a little lighter on Friday and Saturday, but I think I'll go to maybe 2 or 3 times a week, just, beginning of your week, heading into the weekend, that kind of thing. Link to the Discord. That's in the Patreon in the description. I don't know if it's in this description, but it's usually in all of my videos at the description below. This one, I'm using a live stream So I'm not sure. It didn't update my description below, but that's how you can get access to the Discord. What are my thoughts on JT Miller? Drafted him in the 3rd round, but looking to trade him. Should I keep it? No, I think Miller's better than those guys. So first off, he's dual eligible, so that helps. Center, left wing. Second thing that I noticed, because I hadn't really covered him too much in some of the videos. Just trying to pull him up. I just had him up here. So JT Miller, 1.23 points per game last year. Massive jump from his 0.86 the year before, but he had a 1.04 2 years ago. So he's probably around a point per game if he does regress. 32 goals last year was very nice. Plus 15, 2.5 shots per game. But the thing that I was struck by was 0.47 power play points per game, 38 power play points last year. That is huge, and not much has changed on their power play. So that plus dual eligibility and 2.15 hits per game. So you do get some hits coverage out of JT Miller. That's a lot to like in terms of positional flexibility, power play production, hits, and overall point production with a couple goals sprinkled in. Decent plus minus if you have that. So I think he's definitely better than Kuznetsov. Forsberg has higher upside but just doesn't stay healthy. So he's only played, I think, a maximum 69 games in the last 5 years. So I would take JT Miller over those. Wasn't sharing pre-draft. We're finished now. A friend already knew about you. Back-to-back winners. Nice. I appreciate that. Am I gonna make best streamer on every Monday or similar content? We're gonna highlight trends. I haven't completely thought through the exact way that it's gonna work, but I'm open to your input. Whatever helps you guys the most. And I think that's so. What I'm thinking right now. Sunday night we'll probably touch on the schedule for the upcoming week so that you can make your moves Sunday night before. If you only have 4 roster moves per week, and you want to save some of them and you didn't use them in the previous week, you can do all those on Sunday night. So I think Sunday night is when we're going to look at the schedule for the upcoming week, maybe go over some trends. And then I want to do a video probably Friday afternoon before the weekend, because usually a lot of leagues and a lot of head-to-head things come down to the weekend. So you're going to need some plays heading into your weekend. If you need some streamers, some goaltender streams or something like that. But I am flexible and open to ideas, whatever helps you guys the most. 12th and 13th, Hedman and Marner. That is a win. Okay, so here's the point breakdown for Tanner. Man, that is stingy. I'm assuming blocks is 0.5, not 5. And you're going to want, so in this league format, you're going to want goaltenders on good teams that win a lot and get shutouts. So that will make you want to favor maybe a Markstrom or an Anderson over, I would still consider Saros or one of those guys in the same category. But you're going to want a goaltender who's going to win a lot, who's starting a lot, and who's on a good team. You're not going to want to take a flyer on like a Logan Thompson or something, crazy like that. The highest point rating is goaltending wins and shutouts, and both of those are weighted higher than goals. So for your offense, I think you do want to favor goals with most of your positions. Hits, blocks, and shots all seem to be very low. Blocks, if blocks are 0.5, that's interesting that it's higher than the hits and shots. So then you would maybe want some blocking defensemen as opposed to power play. But you still get 2.5 for a power play goal. You get an extra 0.5 for a power play point, but That's pretty stingy. It's going to be tough to mine some value, but there's nothing other than making sure your goalies are on good teams with good defenses. There's nothing crazy to think about there in terms of you don't have face-off wins, and it's not 1 point for a shot, 1 point for a hit, that kind of thing. Russell, drafting 7th in a 10-man points league. My league settings are 5 for goals, 3 for assists. See, that's a little bit more goal heavy. +1 for power play points, shorthanded points. So for both of you, if you have shorthanded points, that's a great opportunity to stash Brad Marchand. So Marchand is one of the best shorthanded goal scorers in the league. Just trying to look up. I don't want all time. Just look up shorthanded goals leaders. I do want to give you accurate information. So if you look at the all-time list, Brad Marchand is 14th in shorthanded goals, which is insane. He has 33 shorthanded goals. He's behind Marian Hossa, Pavel Bure. I mean, that's kind of insane. Let me look up last season. Because this is a nice little wrinkle for both of your leagues, Tanner and Russell. Especially Russell if you're getting 2 points for shorthanded points, not just... So shorthanded point, another thing too, Kreider and Zibanejad both kill penalties. So with Kreider, you'd be getting dual position left wing, right wing. You'd be getting power play production, crazy power play production, and some shorthanded goals. He already scored a shorthanded goal in the preseason. Yeah, just trying to bring up this shorthanded goals from last season. Formanton is a nice option, but that's his main thing. 32 points and 79. Trevor Moore might be the guy to go to for shorthanded stats. 48 points in 81 games last year. Like I said before, that line was 10th in the league in goals, and he was tied for first with 5 shorthanded goals. Ilya Mikheyev was third with 4. Barkov is a nice pick for shorthanded goals with 4, but you're going to pay a price to get him. Isaac Lundestrom and Gus Nyquist with 4 as well. Nugent Hopkins with 3. Mitch Marner with 3. Let me just pull this over so you guys can see it without this dumb ad. Or with the dumb ad, I guess. But yeah, so... yeah, it blocks out the numbers, and I don't want to click on it. Marner, Nugent Hopkins, Atkinson, nobody's drafting him if you want to get them. And another effing ad. So Rupe Hintz might be a nice shorthanded goal guy. Chris Kreider, as I just mentioned. Evander Kane, that's a little bit of a surprise. I didn't think he'd be killing penalties. So these are some guys you can go to for shorthanded points. So Russell's not sure who to target first and second round, drafting 7th in a 10-man points league. So, with that weighting, I would make sure it's a goal scorer. I would target Cooch if he's there, and I bet he will be. If you don't get Kucherov, I mean, that's one of those. Kucherov, Kaprizov, or Rantanen would work at 7th. And then on the back end of the snake, I would grab your first D. And I would make sure your D puts up power play points. So let me grab the power play dashboard. All right, so power play. Hedman and Josi obviously are right there. So Makar's going first, and then you're given one of these two guys. They're both excellent for the power play. Fox is going to get you power play, but he's not going to get you shots. Same with Hughes. Hughes covers a lot. Hughes doesn't cover a lot, but he does a lot of work on the power play. Same with Fox. And then people have been, I almost drafted Drew Doughty today because of this. It's a shortened sample size because he did get hurt, but when he's that high on the list and people don't realize it, that's value. Same thing with Tony DeAngelo. I get the fact that this stat was from Carolina and now he's in Philly, but he's going to be the power play guy there. So, and then look at Tyson Barrie. That's why I kind of think that he's the guy over Bouchard. And then Torrey Krug is going really late as well, and he's still really good, and that power play is top 5. So these are some nice value plays. Even Seth Jones, if you don't have plus minus, for a deeper option. But in terms of what you're asking, Russell, the top guys, these are the top guys. Hedman, Josi, Makar. If you get points for shots, see, I covered this in the D video. Hamilton jumps to the top. Same with Werenski, and then there's Chychrun. So that's why if you don't have plus minus, you could target Chychrun. He's going to get a ton of shots if he's healthy. And he's asked for a trade. So that's another potential thing to keep in the back of your mind. If he gets traded to a contender and he's putting up excellent numbers and now has people to work with, that could be huge value because he's going through 12-team drafts and he's undrafted. And then, this is why I favor Shabbat and Nurse a little bit more. The shot volume is there. Petrangelo's right there with them for the person who asked me about Petrangelo earlier. So yeah, some interesting options for shots, power play points. These are the guys at the top. Then overall point production. Yeah, it's the usual suspects at the top. But again, DeAngelo and Doughty are up there when you wouldn't necessarily expect them. And I'm sneaky high on Erik Karlsson this year. I think with him as the main power play guy, that could be an interesting file. But we will continue with the questions. I mean, Russell, if Makar falls to you, go for it because he's not going to be there with the second pick. But because then you could go Makar with the 7th pick and then somebody, offensive Ovechkin or something crazy like that with the 2nd pick. So if he is there, grab him. But if not, you can do the opposite and get your Kucherov or Kaprizov or somebody like that, and then get your D with the next pick. Why did it jump? Falling behind the questions. This sucks. I got to get back to it. What happens to Hintz without Robertson? Yeah. I think Robertson gets done before the season starts. If not, he's still got Pavelski, and, if they don't have Robertson, I wonder if that means Stankoven makes the team. Apparently it's looking like Wyatt Johnston is getting closer to making the team than Stankoven, but I was going to add Stankoven to the video for the rookies. And if Robertson isn't signed, I wonder if he does make it. I think his value will take a little bit of a hit, but I'm pretty sure he's dual position eligible and he's available in the 9th, 10th round, something like that. So it's interesting. If you're watching the video, you can still see, like, in the furthest one, there's the visualization in the back. Kind of trippy. Who do you pick at 9 in a bangers league? I wouldn't change too much. I don't plan for hits in the first round just because the offensive production is way higher in the first round than what you're going to get later. So I think, if you want to do Tkachuk, you're missing a ton of points. You're leaving a lot of points on the board, but he's going to cover shots and hits. So I think that's I would usually just go with best player available with the first round, and then the second round I would maybe start thinking about hits. Is Jack Eichel worth trading for? I'd say yes, depending on what you're giving up. I picked him last year on all of my teams just because he was available in the 8th, 9th, 10th round, and he was way better than anybody else in that general range, and I stashed him. And so I'm worried now that I did that last year and went through an entire year of pain, and I'm not going to get the payoff. So I did draft him in my data draft league this afternoon. I have McDavid and Eichel as my 2 centers. So, and he's looking good in the preseason. He's probably going to get you 40 goals. He's probably going to get you 3.5 shots a game minimum. And I think the sky's the limit now that he's feeling healthy. Been drafting my first goalie in the 6th round, likes of Demko, Campbell, Anderson, then grabbing Ullmark and Elvis with my last 4 picks. That's fine. As long as you have that elite starter, you can take a swing on a timeshare. And then, if you do get Demko or one of those guys, then it's fine. And Elvis seems to be the popular pick with a starting goaltender later on. So nothing bad about that. Ullmark puts up good numbers in a timeshare, so yeah, I like that. Is Seider worth trading Jack Hughes? No. I wouldn't trade either. Well, I would trade Dubois for Seider. I wouldn't trade Hughes for Seider. And I went over this in his short video. And maybe I can pull that up because I did do a short on it. It'll be sideways for a second. Just got to flip it back around. So that hits number is, I believe, 72nd in terms of defense. The blocks number is 19th. And the power play number is nothing crazy. It's good. It's not bad. 21 power play points. It's just not crazy elite. Whereas with Jack Hughes, so, 43 goal pace last year. In the second half, he was at a 50 goal pace and 6th in the league in goals per game. The shot volume is surprisingly there. And then the point per game, 1.14 and a 1.28 in the second half. And he gets, that's slightly better power play production. It's still not elite level, but last year he didn't have Hamilton on the blue line, and Severson was the power play guy. They could never kind of figure out what they wanted to do in terms of personnel, and this year they have more options. So I would definitely choose Hughes over Seider. Can you tell me about Zibanejad? I have a keeper league and kept Panarin, Zib, and Marner. Was able to draft Ekblad, Letang, Buchnevich, Pietrangelo, Gudas, Point, Jeannot, and the Colorado tandem, and that's okay. Zibanejad has 40-plus goal potential. He's likely over a point per game guy, even when he's not playing his best. He gets you exposure to a top 5 power play in the league. He's the trigger man on that power play as well. Can't say anything at all negative about Zibanejad. The Colorado tandem in net is okay. So what happened in the league that we just drafted earlier, somebody got Shesterkin and then the Colorado tandem, and that is perfect because you get your number 1. I think he got him at 16. It wasn't a crazy reach, but he did have to pay a price to get Shesterkin. But the Colorado tandem is going to get you wins. So, I think if you're going to get one, you should get both. How do I think Kyle Connor is going to do? I think every year he is extremely good. So, yeah. Kyle Connor, he's a 40-goal pace, 5-year average. So that's very consistent, very safe. And then last year he went off 0.93 point per game, 5-year average, but last year he was well above that. Even if he reverts back to his 5-year average and he's a point per game guy with 40-goal coverage as a left winger in the 3rd round, that's still really good. And then the shot volume, 7th in the league, you do want that. And then the power play numbers are very good too, 28 power play points. And then, He's either playing with Scheifele or Dubois. I would assume Scheifele, and Scheifele's over a point per game center. Ehlers is healthy again, and he's close to, I think he's a .9 and change point per game guy. And Ehlers is a shot volume guy as well. So you're getting some good category coverage with Kyle Connor. And he's a favorite of mine. I usually draft him in the 3rd, 4th round every year, and he does a lot for my team. Thoughts on taking Seider for D1 for 1D or 2D? He'd be my D3 because of what he covers. I don't like him as a D1 or D2. He's okay for D2. I don't like him as a D1. But I know Fantasy Puck likes him a lot more than I do for D1. And that's a lot of category coverage, which what I tried to do is just look at it as, you know, for me, I want those power play quarterbacks. And if your league doesn't favor power play quarterbacks, you could use them as a D1. But I like to have, you know, the defenseman getting some category coverage on offense, and that includes power play production. If you get power play production, that's easy assist coverage, sometimes goal coverage as well. And I do think, you know, the numbers that I just pointed out for Seider, they were last year, and they were his rookie year. So they could take a bump from that. Typically speaking, what I've noticed with young D, some point in the first 3 or 4 years of their career, they have a down year. And last year sure wasn't a down year for Seider. So that leaves him a 25 to 50% chance that this year's his down year. Now, that's not... I would love to do a proper analysis on that. It would take more time than what I'm going to have before the draft, before the start of the season. But yeah, I like Seider for a D3, and that's why I said he'd be a good 8th round pick, not a 4th rounder for me. Picking 10th in a 10-team banger league with 4 keepers, fresh start. Thinking of grabbing Seider with 3rd or 4th. Yeah, don't do it. I mean, 4th pick, you're at 40. If by that point you already have 1 or 2 D, that's fine. I just don't think he's elite enough. Like, if you got Quinn Hughes, his power play production is almost double. Not quite, but almost. It's like 1.5 times what you're getting out of Seider. Same thing with Fox, but Hughes is probably there in the same range. Do I have that graphic? Can I pull that up for you? Was it the 5th mock? I don't have that graphic up. Yeah, so I did the comparison in, I believe, the mock 4 video between Riley, Hughes, Letang, and Seider. They're all usually in the same range in the draft, and I would prefer any of the other guys ahead of them, just because the elite offensive production is there, and I would prefer to use my other D spots to get the hits and blocks coverage. I think this is like covering something else that I missed before. Oh, for post-draft. Okay, I see what you're saying. Streamer help. I mean, it's going to be just guys who are hot right now, if you need them. It's not going to be nothing crazy. Leagues are different, but you know, if you're looking at a guy and he's getting a ton of shot volume over the course of a couple weeks, then you might want to just keep an eye on that type of stuff. I'm just going to pause for a second and see if we're any closer to getting to 1,000. I doubt it.
981.
What?
981.
981. We're a little closer. We've picked up a couple. Joined a previous set keeper team via... Oh, that's tough. Via ESPN. Only D available. Burns, Chabot, Seider, Dobson, Bouchard. See... That's a case where if Seider's your D1, it makes more sense. If I were to rank just these guys in terms of what I would like from them, I think Chabot is going to get the most ice time and maybe the best power play exposure. Seider's going to get you the most category coverage. Dobson is pretty good on the power play. It's just I don't know how much offense there is on Long Island. Bouchard would be last. I think Burns is going to have a lot of shot volume. It's just there's more risk because he's coming to a new team and we just haven't seen it yet. I would go with one of these first three guys with whatever D you have there. If you can grab one of them. Because Burns, he's been trending downward over the past couple years. That's the main reason to fade him. I would expect him to take a bump in shots. But at this point, I personally would maybe go Chabot just because of the power play exposure. But you could go Seider there. That's not a problem. I would fade the other two guys just a little bit. But to be honest with you, if it's a keeper league and you're planning ahead for the future, Chabot and Seider are the two best options there, in my opinion. Dobson's a close third if you're looking to keep him. Not everybody on your team is going to be a keeper, so kind of make that call yourself, see what you have, but yeah. The league clearly values D-men early, but is it worth drafting those players earlier? From history, those players go around the 5th, 7th rounds debating who to take first. Yeah. It just keep in mind, offense is what wins championships. So you want to help your offense with your D. You don't want to pick D so early that you're hurting your offense. I guess that's kind of the ethos behind why I say go best player available in the first round normally and not pick a D, because you want your D to help your offense. You don't want to pick a defenseman who gets a point per game as opposed to a forward who gets 1.5 points per game. Jared, Atkinson was Giroux dependent in Philly. I had them both last year. Yes, but without Giroux in Philly, when Atkinson was on Columbus, he was still a pretty consistent 30-goal guy. So, Tim Stutzle. I like him a lot. There's a lot of upside to his file, and he's not being crazy overdrafted right now. Let me look at his ADP. I believe he's in the 90 range at this point. But he's dual eligible, so that does help if positional flexibility is important to you. Stutzle 97.7 in the 8th round. Center, left wing. And if you were watching the playoffs last year and you saw Lafreniere starting to go off and starting to take his game to another level, you also saw that in Tim Stutzle in the second half last year. So let me just look at my second half analysis, see if he's there in any of these categories, because that could be a nice thing to highlight. A little further down than I thought. Let's look at point per game. a lot of guys went off last year. So that's something that I mention every video. Scoring was up last year, so a lot of guys that you see, they're going to regress. Little tidbit, Clayton Keller, 1.15 points per game in the second half last year. Little interesting. Braden Shen, 1.11. I don't see Stutzle, but I do like Stutzle. Stutzle, 0.86 points per game in the second half last year, 38 points in 44 games. So nothing crazy. Tkachuk was right around that same spot. Same with Claude Giroux. Aho, Hintz, Teravainen are all in the same range. But yeah, I think Stutzle is going to have a nice year. It's just, I wouldn't have overdrafted him, but he's not getting overdrafted. In the 8th round, 9th round, that's pretty much what you'd want, and he's dual eligible, so that does help. Is Mikheyev coming back? Is it worth it to grab him? Good question, because I don't ever think of him as fantasy relevant. Ilya Mikheyev. So I'll just read you his past 3 seasons point per game. 0.58, 0.31, 0.60. I don't think he's worth it. The goal coverage was very nice last year, 0.39 goals per game, 21 and 53. But that was with Toronto, and I don't know if he's going to get that again. 2.77 shots per game is pretty good. Yeah, I don't know if I'd go there. Let's ask Jared. McCabe's week to week, says Jared, our resident Vancouver Canuck expert. Did he mention it lower? He didn't. Yeah, let's get me to 1K. That'd be very nice. I plan on doing a lot more of these live stream Q&As, especially if I can get to 1K. So, if you like this, tell your friends to sub, because you are probably already subscribed. If I'm picking 3 goalies for fantasy, can you recommend when do I pick them? Yes, I can. Watch my very first video on this channel. Although 6-man team, so watch my very first video on this channel, cut the rounds in half, and cut the ADPs in half. So if I say pick a goalie in the 30 to 40 range, pick them in the 15 to 20 range or whatever. The first video on my channel, do not draft a goalie in the first round. Buchnevich or Teravainen? So Buchnevich kills penalties. That could be a little bit of a tiebreaker. Teravainen is very good on the power play. So Teravainen last year had lower point per game average at 0.84. 22 goals in 77 games, 2.6 shots, good plus minus. 0.40 on the power play is why you would like Teravainen. 31 power play points. That's really good. That's elite level. In terms of power play options, he's one of the best guys that you're going to get in that range. But Buchnevich, 1.04 points per game last year, 30 goals in 73 games, so a much higher goal pace. Plus 29, so even better. 2.7 shots per game, so a little bit better there. 0.26 on the power play, a little bit worse there, but nothing crazy. And Buchnevich, he killed penalties in New York. I don't know how much they use him for that in St. Louis. I would assume they did, but if anybody watching this is currently subscribing to the Patreon, I will leave you a message as soon as I can finish this. Because sometimes it's tough to figure out where the visualizations are. If you want the pick planner, I have to email it to you for whatever reason. Yeah, I've kind of neglected a couple of things here. I don't know what I'm going to do for dinner. Running out of water. Need a bathroom break. We'll grind it out, but we'll see what happens. Should I trade Buchnevich for Jack Hughes? If you can, yeah. If you need a center, and if whoever does that will take it, yeah. Fleury and Hellebuck. No, Fleury and Hellebuck are both starters over these guys who are all timeshares. They're all good timeshares, but I would prefer. I would prefer Fleury and Hellebuck. Hellebuck's going to get you 60 starts. Fleury, high 50s, I would imagine. Fleury's numbers were a little troublesome last year, but that was a lot of Chicago baked into that. Got Francouz in the 18th round for G3. That's fine. I mean, I like Francouz for save percentage and all that. Yeah, I think you're fine with Fleury and Hellebuck and Francouz. Who do I like out of the following who could be a G2? Georgiev, Merzlikins, Grubauer, then all the timeshare guys like Knight, Thompson, Francouz. That's tough. I like these three as G3s. Same with Thompson, Francouz, and Talbot, and Ullmark. Ullmark is more of a G2 to me, and Knight is more of a G2 to me. And I say that because Knight is on a better team, and there is a potential chance, and I thought this last year, which is why I picked him up last year, there is a chance that Bobrovsky either gets hurt, which hasn't happened yet, or loses the crease, which a couple years ago, that would have been what I would expect to happen. I would have expected Bobrovsky to suck and Knight to come in and save the day. And he kind of did that at the end of last season. Coming in towards the end of the season, he got a lot more starts than he did previously. But then Bobrovsky was good in the playoffs and kind of made up for it. So, of these, I like Knight and Ullmark as G2s. And then as your G3, I like Grubauer because he's playing behind the fourth best defense last season. And he's typically a 920 goalie who just had a horrible season. And I think that season's a one-off. And he's going to get 50-plus starts. Merzlikins, there's nothing wrong with him. He's a starter on what could be... I think Columbus might be better than Seattle this year. So if you're going for wins, that might be the play. But yeah, I mean, all these guys are timeshares. Some have more risk than others. Thompson's risky. Talbot is a little risky. Just because of that defense. Kicking yourself because it costs you a stronger D3. Yossi, Doughty, Falk, and Anderson. Those are fine. Yossi, Doughty hits a little bit. They both hit a little bit and block. Anderson's a power play quarterback, and then Falk is your goal guy, so it's still fine. Should you trade Robertson for DeBrincat? No. I'm trying to think, because DeBrincat's usually dual position eligible. Is he this year? He is not. So, in that case, they're very similar. And if Robertson's back, I like his line assignment just because he knows those guys and he's put up numbers with those guys before. So that's... I like both of them. I've had DeBrincat. I had him last year. I got DeBrincat 28th last year, and he was still worth it. So, but I don't think you're getting a massive upgrade from one to the other. I think it's marginal. Unless Robertson doesn't sign. But Saros and Demko as your goalies? Nope, you're set. You're set there. I would play the schedule with your G3. Those are two excellent goalies. Adam Fox is D1, Ekblad D2, Riley and Theodore. That's excellent defense. It's only too much if you start the season and realize your offense isn't good enough, and then maybe you have to make an adjustment, but at least you have the pieces to trade. So I guess this is a trade proposal. Carlson and Svechnikov for Eichel and Jones. Yeah, I think I'd do that. If you're getting Eichel and Seth Jones, I think that's... You're getting a little bit more greasy category coverage with Seth Jones than Erik Karlsson. So you're losing the power play quarterback D, but he's probably not your number one power play quarterback D. With Svech, you're losing some hits, but you're gaining a ton of shots. I mean, Eichel's a shot volume monster, and he's probably a 40-goal guy this year. So, yeah, if you're getting Eichel and Jones, I would definitely do that. Who's a good waiver wire pickup after the draft is done? I will tell you that in a video that I hope to be out tomorrow. I've started thinking about it. I haven't put it together yet, but there will be some deep plays hopefully coming out tomorrow. Can you go with two G2s like Linus and Forsberg? Not if those are your only goalies, because I don't think you're going to get enough starts. In that case, if you're pushing your goalies back this far, I would handcuff two guys on the same team, because then you're guaranteed 82 starts, as opposed to timeshares like these guys who are their starts aren't going to line up all the time. So 1 week, if neither of these guys starts that week, then you're screwed. But if you have two from the same team, then somebody's got to start. Thoughts on Laf and Kakko? I'm high on Lafreniere. I'm not high on Kakko for fantasy. I think they should keep the kid line together. They have great chemistry, and I think all three of those players are better when they play together. And I think that's what they're trying to do. They tried Sammy Blais on the top line with Kreider and Zibanejad. They tried Gaudreau there a little bit. They have Kaprizov on the second line with Panarin and Trocheck. And I think they're trying to keep the kid line together, which is best for their production, but then they're going to have to roll three lines and make sure that this kid line gets ice time. And I hope that happens. Mikheyev generates a ton of chances with his speed, confidence, patience with the puck. Yeah, he's good for shorthanded goals, if that is a category. But he is a little bit... so he's week to week. So if you can wait on that and pick him up off the wire, that would be the play. To be honest, I don't know what to expect with Mikheyev on Vancouver as opposed to him in Toronto. But he was a good, middle six player in Toronto on a really good team. My thoughts on Seth Jarvis. I think he's getting a lot of love from the YouTube community. I don't know if it's warranted. It may be, but if you just look at last year, 0.58 points per game, you can find that on the wire. Not a crazy goal production, 0.25 goal per game. 1.6 shots per game is very low. Plus 11 on a really good team. Not much power play production at all. 0.08 power play points per game. 1 hit per game, a little surprising. But I think there's better options you can take a swing at late. The reason I think he's getting a lot of love from the YouTube community is his line assignment, and he's in the top 6 in Carolina. The problem that I have with Carolina is that they don't have any elite. Like, Svechnikov should be elite, Aho is a point per game guy, and he's very consistent. But they just don't have that one guy that drives the bus. That Huberdeau, that Panarin, that Matthews, the guy who everybody else feeds off of. And I think if they had that, then the Seth Jarvis in the top 6 makes a little bit more sense. But it's not like he's playing with some, ridiculously productive player on his line. As pick 1, would it be reasonable to take McDavid, then Fox Hedman as pick 2 or 3? Yeah, no, that's what I should have done today. I didn't do that because Marner fell to me in my second pick and Panarin fell with my third pick. So I just went crazy offense as opposed to thinking the way that I would normally think and grabbing one of these 2D. But the other part of that is Fox, Hedman, I do that again. Fox, Hedman, Josi, Ekblad, they were all gone by the time I had my second pick, which is why I went Marner. So at pick number 1, my number 1 pick was McDavid, and then my next pick would have been a defenseman, but they had taken all the best options off the board. So I went with best available, which was Marner and Panarin. And so if you're planning it out, I would try to get a defenseman there. Fox, Hedman, Josi, or Ekblad, or John Carlson in that range. Do I have an opinion on an ideal keeper setup? Seen a bunch of different ideas on the best way to do it. I don't have an opinion on it. I try to... there are certain things that I shy away from just because I don't have an abundance of an experience with that format, and I don't have a ton of keeper experience. So I don't want to steer you the wrong way. It's really... The one thing I will say, I like the fact that you lose whatever draft pick of the keeper that you're getting, because somebody last year picked up Nazem Kadri with like their last pick, and now they're keeping him, and that's huge value for that person. I like that little wrinkle. Other than that, I don't really have any thoughts on it. Thoughts on Kreider? I'm gonna tease this, Benjamin. I do need to grab some water, and I'm going to take a bathroom break. So if you'll give me about 60 seconds, I'll try to make it as quick as I can, and I'll come back with my thoughts on Chris Kreider. So if you're watching this, just hold tight. I'll be right back. All right, Chris Kreider, dual position, left wing, right wing, 26 power play goals last year, led the league. He also gets some shorthanded goals, if your league has that. He's on a top 5 power play, top line on a really good team, picks up some hits. He's likely due for regression. I think that's baked in. Everybody kind of knows that. So last year, 0.95 points per game. So with a second round pick, I think that's a little bit of a reach just because his 5-year average is 0.71. And he's likely due for a regression in goals. 3.185 shots per game is very good. 0.43 power play points per game. 26 power play goals. So if your league has that, if your league has game-winning goals, he had 11, and I believe that was top. Might have been number 1 in the league, but it's at the top end of the league for game winners. He was number 1 in power play goals. Power play points, very good. 1.7 hits on top of that per game. So he's a really good pick. I do think he's going to regress, but I don't think it's crazy. Ericksson Eck, very strong player. Really good exposure in Minnesota's top 6. He's being drafted really late. Joel Ericksson Eck. Yeah, that's the only problem. So his goal scoring is pretty good. 0.33 goals per game the last 2 seasons. But the point production, 0.53, 0.63. Trending up over the past couple years. Good shot coverage, 2.89 shots per game. Plus 16. 0.22 power play points. 1.79 hits per game. So that's a nice little category coverage bonus. Giroux, I like for dual eligibility center right wing. And he's top 6 exposure for Ottawa, which is very enticing. And he's typically a 0.9 point per game type of guy. Usually very good on the power play. So I would expect none of that to change. He's, pretty much proven that over the years that he's consistent there. We're going to go about 5 more minutes. I've been neglecting the family for too long. Smoke break would have been nice. Definitely not enough time. Hardly enough time for a pee break. Keeper league resetting next year, 7-year keeper. No draft pick cost or anything along those lines. I don't think it's the best, but I love it because you can win 4 or 5 out of 7 years. So yeah, if you hit it right, that could work. My favorite player in the league right now, I don't know. Favorite all time is probably Tkachuk. He was a guy I would tune in every game because he would do something crazy on defense, like strip a guy from behind the net and score, or he used to do this thing where he'd strip the puck off your stick by laying his stick flat on the ice and hooking it off your stick, and that's a really badass move. I used to try to do that in my men's league. So I don't have a favorite player, I guess, in the league now. I have a bunch that I like, but nobody that... I'll just say Radko Gudas is my favorite right now. He's not, but... is trading Kreider for Evander Kane a good idea? I'd say no. I'd say that because for 2 reasons. One, Evander Kane is one more allegation away from never playing again in the NHL. So there's that risk. And Kreider scores a ton of his goals just by standing in front of the net and tipping pucks. And he is, in my opinion, the best guy in front for tipping pucks in. So a lot of his goal coverage is zero effort. Well, not zero effort because he's standing there getting cross-checked, but that's a lot of easy goals with Fox, Panarin, and Zibanejad just feeding him on the power play. And the power play numbers are going to be there for Kreider. The shorthanded numbers are going to be there. Kane is a little overhyped, but at the same time, he's fallen in a couple drafts. What do I think? 14-team league, all cats except blocks. Reaching for Letang, 4th pick. Dougie, 6th. Shabbat, 7th for my 3D. I like it. You get tons of shot volume. Letang gets some hit coverage as well. Yeah, 14 team, that's pretty solid. I appreciate that. Yeah, pre-draft is important, which is why I've been grinding it out. Thoughts on Makar in the first round? We went over this a little bit before. I think it's, if you want Makar, that's where you got to get him. Other than that, I don't like picking D in the first round. I think, like I just mentioned before, Makar's a 1.1 point per game player. 28 goals last year. Very good. He's the best defenseman. But the best forward available in that range is probably 0.4 points per game higher. And you want your defense to augment your offense. You don't want them to hold your offense back. Who would I rather protect in a keeper, Lundell or Jarvis? I'm leaning Lundell, but I want to back that up with some data. Yeah, so 0.67 points per game last year. 44 points in 65 games. Higher shot volume, even though it's not great, at 1.92. Plus 33. And the main problem Lundell has is right now they have Sam Bennett as their second-line center. And I think Lundell, at his best, should be in the top 6. So that's why you'd go Jarvis, because he's already in the top 6. And I believe Jarvis is dual eligible. But I like the offensive ceiling for Lundell a little bit more with his frame. So my personal call would be Lundell. But Jarvis has the better line assignment now. And we'll probably keep that in the future. Will Ottawa have the puck more? No. They won't. They still haven't figured out their D, and that's the biggest problem with them, I think, is they have tons of forwards and one defenseman to get them the puck. I mean, unless you like Zub. He was pretty good, but Shabbat is their main puck mover. I think they're going to use 2 power play units. I think Brady's going to have a good year. It's just, they don't have a ton of D getting all these forwards the puck. Yeah, a draft where Kane went 12th overall. There's hype for sure. I would not be that guy, but he could. I mean, the second half Evander Kane last year was maybe worth 12th overall. Could you get away with going D, wingers, goalies in the first 5 to 7 rounds outside of the first round since there's so much depth at center? Yep. Yes, you can. And that's basically at the heart of what I've been trying to tell people is there's a ton of centers late, especially in that 8 to 12 range in terms of rounds, depending on league size. But yeah, for the live stream I did earlier where we did the draft, every single player in the draft knew my strategy, so they all grabbed my D out from under me. Other than that, I would have prioritized D and wingers. But I had the first overall pick, so I had to go McDavid. So I kind of started off on the wrong foot. I'm not going to complain about getting McDavid. But normally I would go D and wings and goalies in the first 5 to 7 rounds. This is a league where all 10 GMs are present and all of them are diamond or platinum ranked. Then they must really want hits and goals coverage. All right, I think I made it to the bottom of the chat, and on that, I'm going to end it. We didn't hit 1,000, so I'm going to relentlessly yell at everybody in this chat that's also in the Discord server for not getting me to it. I'm just kidding. But yeah, if you watched any of this, if you got anything out of it, then thank you for joining us. Hopefully that deep plays video will be coming out tomorrow, if I can find some time to record it tomorrow, because I think I have both my boys with me tomorrow. But yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it, and